Hello and welcome back to COMM-6019 46. This is the third set of slides for this first module. We started with a course subscription and student expectations. Then the second set talked about why this course is important to you, at the very least to write good emails to me. In this third one, we're going to talk about adapting to audiences, because adapting to an audience is important because at the very least, it's an ethical consideration of the person that could be reading this document. It could be something as short as an email or as long as a 30, 50, 100 page report that is going to be now read by several different people. They're going to act on it to do a variety of different things. It doesn't matter. But what you want to always consider is who is your audience, and that is worthy of consideration, because what we're asking you to do is to empathize with the potential reader or readers and think about what you know of these people or the organization to kind of predict the way in which the message will be first of all transmitted, right? Email, personal business letter, whatever it may be. So think about the people in the organization that they belong to, and use that to predict likely responses, right? And design your approach accordingly. If you are going to present bad news to someone, do you want to put it in the subject line or the first sentence? Well, if you do, there should be a really good reason for it. And we'll talk about that in a few weeks. But what we're asking you to do is to empathize with your audience and think about them as you are writing your message. And so why is that important? Because what it means is that you're considering your message, you're tailoring your message to your potential audience. Now, you can think about that potential audience in terms of their feelings, their perceptions, their thought patterns, the way in which certain subjects may be considered taboo or off limits, broader social and cultural influences. All these things matter. Even if it's a business communication, those things still matter. And intercultural communication in particular is something that we don't tend to realize in North America until we start communicating with people from somewhere else, or we work with someone that was born and raised in another part of the world and is working with you. And if you talk to them and you really listen, right, not keep talking at them, but you really listen to them, you'll find out that the way in which people think and feel about things, the way they perceive things, the way in which they sense, they feel about certain things is really quite different. Now, does that make it confusing or difficult? No. You can ask yourself a series of questions that will allow you to be able to communicate effectively with that potential audience and still take all those issues into account. Okay, the organization itself, it's important. Of course it is, because that's the organization that you're doing business with. But ask yourself whether the organization is vertical or horizontal, right? In other words, is it tall or is it flat and wide? Now, why is that important? Because if the organization is tall or hierarchical, right, which means you have different levels and stages, there's lower, mid, upper management, there's, CEOs, there are the stockholders that also you may have to communicate with. There are people that may be working below you that are within a certain department. Depending on how the organization is structured, right, hierarchical or flat, there will be ways to address certain departments. If all the departments are considered equal, in other words, they are flat and they are kind of set across a horizon line, then there is really no one group that is more important in the chain of command than another. But if it's done and if it's structured hierarchically, then clearly business decisions, for example, are going to be done higher up. And when we talk about the higher ups, we literally mean those that are above us. And sometimes organizations like to kind of remind us that those in charge, their offices tend to be a little higher up in the building, aren't they? It's rare that a CEO has got a basement apartment, right? No, it doesn't happen that way, does it? So depending on how the organization is structured, that should indicate to you how to deal with the people that you're trying to contact. Okay, you can ask yourself, how do people get ahead in that organization? Is it by seniority, by experience? Is it by, how well liked they are, how they interact with customers? That's also important because it deals with the people that work in that organization. Does your organization value diversity, inclusiveness, or homogeneity? Diversity versus homogeneity is really important because diversity is, things are diverse. There are a variety of opinions, all, open, and people listen to one another, think about and discuss the best ones to follow through with. Or is it kind of homogenous, where there's a kind of prevailing attitude that, well, we've always done it this way, or, well, we do what the boss says and nobody kind of talks back. Well, if it's a homogenous sort of world, that may influence the way in which you write an email, and of course, to which person you're writing to within that department. So if it's diverse and independent, tends to be people can think on their own and people can make business decisions on their own. So you may not have to write an email to 5 different people. You might just need to contact the one person and they can make it happen from their end. But if it's homogenous and dependent, where let's say every business decision has to move across, the same person's desk, might be the vice president, could even be the CEO, right? There are people, or like plant managers, for example. There's some whose work style is such that they want to keep their finger in every pot that's there. In other words, they want to know what's going on right across the board. Even if they don't directly have a ability to make a final decision, they can certainly slow things down. So depending on how the system is organized, that the culture of the organization, that is very, very important. Friendship and sociability, are these important aspects within that company? Some companies want to just be just business, right? No small talk, no, hey, how's the weather? How's the wife and kids, whatever. No, they want to get straight to the point. Okay, if you know that, that's going to tone your email down considerably. You may not, engage in small talk. You will get right to the point because these people that's how they like to do things. Formal behavior, formal language, formal dress, if that is important in the organization, guess what? It's going to be considered important in your email. So the degree of formality in an email will really be reflective of the organization to which you are communicating. If they put a really high degree of importance on behavior and language, write that email well. No grammatical screw-ups, no spelling mistakes, probably not even the use of contractions. What is a contraction? Rather than I am, it would be I'm. I'm is a contraction of I am. Or do not. The contraction for that is don't. Sometimes the degree of formality is that high. Organizational goals. Is it money? Is it serving customers? Is it advancing knowledge? Is it making the world a better place? Is it, trying to reduce their eco footprint? Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. But all those things will factor into the way in which you respond to that organization in terms of your email style, your writing style. All those things will factor in to the way in which you are communicating to that audience. So, in one short sentence, know your audience well. So the audience that is known well, eventually you start writing really without even thinking about it. You're writing unconsciously in the sense that you already know these things. You know that it is a vertically integrated building, a high degree of formal behavior and language. They're no nonsense, get to the point, kind of place where they don't have the time for small talk. Right? Some places do, but some places don't. Be aware which one that they prefer, because if that audience is not well known, you want to be able to find out what's going on, right? You want to know what's happening. Okay, so there are questions you can ask yourself. They're very simple. Again, that this is not rocket science. This is just a whole lot of common sense. That if you do it enough times, becomes simply intuitive. Right? You intuit what it is that you need to do. So one of the questions you can ask is, how will the audience react to the message? Well, back up a little bit. What's in the message? Is the message good news or bad news? Think about it. If it's good news, do you want to sort of ask about all kinds of other things? How's the weather? Hey, you know, my favorite teams. No, get to the point. If it's good news, put it into maybe not the subject line. You could, because it is good news. But if the audience is going to react positively to the message, put the positive news as early in the beginning of the email as possible. That's one way to do it. How much information does the audience need? If this is, let's say, email 7, in an ongoing interaction between two organizations because the two of you are working together on this common project. So how much information does the audience need? If you are, let's say, halfway through, there will be expectations and pre-knowledge that will already be committed to this email and to the project at hand that you probably aren't going to need to put a whole lot of background information in there. The earlier ones, perhaps, because both organizations want to be very clear on what their respective tasks will be. What do they have to do to realize this, to make this goal happen? So how much information does the audience need? Well, it depends on how far along you are in the particular goal that you both have in mind. This could be an initial query. Okay, for example, I wrote a letter to a publisher about maybe 6 to 9 months ago, more or less. I think it was back in early fall. And it was a query letter to inquire into this publisher possibly being interested in my book. So how much information did they need? They needed just enough for them to pique their interest in the book. So I'm not going to give them a long 2-page, detailed description, but I want to kind of highlight the main points of this project. So how much information did that audience need at the time? Enough to catch their interest. And so the response was positive. Yes, we were very interested. Could you send us a sample chapter? Well, by this point, I had already finished it all. So I said, okay, I'm going to send them my last chapter because I thought it was the best one. Now, send it off. They liked it. And then off we went. Now, from that point on, each of the interactions with the editor, because I had 2 different editors, and now I have a sort of the person that's in charge of the publishing, the actual publishing part of it. So they're drawing up galleys and proofreading. All that information that I needed to pass on to them at the beginning changed about halfway through. And we probably have exchanged perhaps a half dozen emails, maybe 8. And each time a different bit of information needs to be presented. But do I go back and rewrite everything? No, of course not. The person I'm speaking to is in the loop, right? They're in on what we're doing. So how much information does the audience need? Enough to make sense of the message. What obstacles must you overcome? Okay, that could be a whole range of things. For example, some of the obstacles may be defining and explaining this project that you're going to share in, whether it's a book, whether it's building something, whether it's road repairs, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it is. But the obstacles that you need to overcome is to clarify the goal in mind. If you are using acronyms, for example, if you're using specific terminology specific to that field, make sure that they are described and defined properly so that both parties, both the speaker and the listener, or the reader, or sort of the writer and the reader, both of you understand exactly what it is that you're talking about. Because if that doesn't happen, there are going to be some problems. Okay, are there any positive aspects that you can emphasize even this early, even with a first? Again, let's go back to my email to the publisher. I said basically that this is a growing field. A lot of articles and books have already been written about these people. And hey, how about getting it on the ground floor on this burgeoning, this rapidly growing field, on this particular group of writers. They were based in France in the 1960s, and lots of people are going back to reread them. This is what this book is about. So do you want to get it on the ground floor? Well, yeah, of course. So that's a positive aspect. Audience's expectations about style and format. If you don't know and you don't know who the reader is at this early point, always err on the more formal style. Regards rather than cheers. Dear Ms., Mr., whoever. They may be considered formal, but there's nothing wrong with writing on a more formal basis because you don't know that audience just yet. You know who they are, you know them by name, but you don't know them as a person. And in fact, the 3 editors that I've worked with, I will probably never meet them. My only communications with them has been through email. So their idea of who I am comes through my writing. And if I'm really dismissive and slack and spelling mistakes, that's in my email. And I'm going to say, hey, yo, you want to publish one of my books? It's dang good. I write real good. Next. No. Instead, dear Ms. So-and-so, I wish to present to you the following proposal on a book that I have finished writing on the following people. And you write it in a formal style because at this point you don't know. But there's no harm in doing it that way because once that formal, sort of introduction is out of the way, then things can loosen up a little bit because now they trust you. They know that, you will do the work. So how will the audience use the document? That's also important. If it's an email, then usually only one person is going to read it. But that email will be filed away. It's always filed away somewhere. Depending on what's going on, think of any email that you write to someone, depending on the sensitivity of the content, something that could be potentially read in court. Because there are many court cases that have been going on now over the last decade or so that use emails as evidence. So, and I'm not saying every single one. If you're just going to write an email to a friend, don't worry about it. But what I'm talking about is, let's go back a few years when Volkswagen, based in Germany, when their lab found out that there were serious issues with their emissions control laboratory. And one person wrote to their superior and indicated this issue. Now, from there, we don't know really what happened for several years, but the person that was kind of the whistleblower, that's typically what they're called, said, look, we have a serious problem. We're making claims about emissions control that are clearly wrong. They are incorrect. We need to fix that. So when the person wrote that email, we don't know how far up the chain of command it went because this issue went on for several years. And so imagine being the person that wrote that first email. The audience, what would they do with that document? Well, they would present it to their higher ups and say, hey, my department person has just indicated to me we have a serious problem with our emissions control here in our laboratory that tells us, the percentage of emissions and so on. They're saying there's something drastically wrong with it. We need to fix it. Well, as it moves up the chain of command, did it get deflected, deferred, ignored, deleted? Something happened for a couple of years because it got worse. So how will the audience use the document? A lot of it depends on what's in it. If it's simply sort of hey, just a heads up to let you know that we're working on this and we're going to have a copy of this document on your desk by Friday morning, no problem. Very, very simple. But hey, we've found out that we've been polluting the Thames River here in London, for the last 6 months, dumping raw sewage into it. And we just found this out. Oh my God, what do we do? That's pretty important. What's the first thing you're going to do? Save a copy of that. And especially the date. And then also remember who you sent it to. So it depends on what the message is, how important it's going to be in terms of the response, the degree of urgency to the message. All these things are important. Okay, 8 steps in adapting tasks to an audience. This is very simple in terms of considering that which you are writing about, which is the content of the email, and that potential audience. So, number 1, better be number 1, you can spotlight the audience's benefits. Now, I'm talking about some serious things here, or have been for a few minutes. Now, let's kind of lighten it up and say, okay, when you're writing something and you're thinking of your audience, the first thing you want to do is spotlight the benefits, right? The warranty starts working for you immediately. Okay, so what is the subject of that sentence? The warranty. sorry, the object is the warranty. The subject is you. And what's the time frame? Immediately. So the audience benefits are pretty decent. Okay, the second one here, cultivating the you view. Now that's important. You will receive your order. Your account is now open. It's identifying you. Now, we need to be careful with that, because if you are writing from an organization to an individual, then have at it and go ahead and identify them as you, especially if you want to cultivate this you view. It doesn't work as effectively the other way around when you are writing to an organization, and it becomes very difficult to cultivate the you view because we don't know who that person is. And it could be an entire department. So when you start talking about you, as each person reads the email as it's passed on to them, or it's been CC'd to 3 or 4 people, when each person reads the pronoun you, they don't know whether you're talking to them directly, or you, the department, or you, the organization. So be careful when you use you. If you know for sure a single individual will read that email, especially if you're talking about a warranty or whatever it may be, and you are writing to a private single individual, then the you view will work. But be careful when you're doing it the other way around, because if you start speaking in those terms, if there is a chance, and there always is, if there's a chance that another person could be reading that email, suddenly you becomes problematic, right? We're not sure who that you is. Number 3, using sensitive language, avoiding gender, race, age, and disability biases. It is certainly possible to write in that way. You call people office workers, not office girls. It's not a fireman, but a firefighter, these kinds of things. Doctors are just doctors. Doctor or nurse, no. You want to identify people regardless of their gender. He or she is a doctor. He or she is an actor. He or she is a firefighter. So avoid as much as possible, in fact, as often as possible, assigning a specific gender to a category, like a work category. And if you watch the Oscars or watch any award shows, you'll notice that it is, although they say, best actor, best actress, for some weird reason we still have that. I'm beginning to wonder how much longer that's going to last, because when people are writing about the performance of someone, the actor is typically male or female. Right? The word actor is no longer designated for just men. So keep that in mind. So number 4, be conversational but professional. Yo, prof? No. Dear prof or hello, prof? Yes. It's conversational, but it's also professional. That's a good way to write. Now, when you're writing to someone and you're writing back to them, you can say, your report was excellent. It's pretty clear that this was a good piece of work. Your report was totally awesome, man. No, that you're not a surfer dude. You're not from Southern California. No. You can talk to people that way if it's a friend who's shown you their report, but you're dealing with professionals. So the first one, your report was excellent. That's the way you want to talk to people. So, as much as possible, try to express your thoughts positively. Notice how you will be happy to. Okay, the word happy pops up in that sentence. You will be happy to know the following, as opposed to you won't be sorry. Even though they mean the same thing, the first one literally uses the word happy. So there's no doubt in that person's mind what's going on. But even the word sorry, even a negative word, will not, sorry, these words color. They colored, even unconsciously, the message. So as much as possible, if you can write in positive terms, that makes a huge difference. So number 6, be courteous. Very simple. It's not that hard. Please complete the report and hand it in. You must complete the report, ! Yeah, a boss could yell that way to you, and you kind of wouldn't like them after a while, but courtesy goes a long way. Please complete the report. Very simple. And you're not badgering these people, you're not browbeating them. yelling at them. It's pretty clear what's going on. Number 7, as much as possible, try to simplify your language and use more familiar words. The word salary really is pretty clear. Everyone knows what that means. But it's also a remuneration. How many people use remuneration? Even English professors don't use that. They still talk about a salary. To begin. Sure, it means to commence something. Commencer is the French for beginning. That's where the word comes from. But we use the word begin, right? To begin, to start with. That's the way that we speak most of the time. And finally, 8, use precise, what are called vigorous words or action words. Email me. That's very specific, right? Email me. Doesn't mean call me, write me a letter that I won't see until next week, or even contact me. Think about it. When somebody says, contact me, okay, how? Do you want me to call you, leave a message, private message to you, look you up on Facebook? Like, no, email me. You're still asking that person to communicate with you and contact you, but you're being very specific. Contact me in the following manner. It's sometimes that simple. When you're asking someone to do something, try to be as precise as possible. Please buy staples, please buy paper clips or pencils or whatever, rather than get those things for me. It's like, get those things for me. It's almost like, you're being dismissive. You don't want to talk that way. You want to be able to speak clearly. So please buy staples. Not only is it polite and courteous, please, but it's very specific. Please buy staples. Simple, sweet little sentence, subject, object, and verb, all in one, and there you go. Okay, so here, the last couple of things I want to look at, developing reader benefits and the U view. Okay, if it's sender focused, requiring all staffers to complete these forms in compliance with company policy. So you're asking someone to read something, complete it, and send it back to you, right? So you're being very clear on what's going on. Receiver focused. Please complete these forms so that you will be eligible for health and dental benefits. So I get an email from someone, let's say from school, and it has to do, in this case, with health and dental benefits. It's very simple. So please complete these forms. So the message is being considerate because it's telling me specifically what to do, as opposed to we are requiring all staffers to complete these forms. Okay, yeah, it means everybody, no matter who you are, you need to fill these things out. But here, please complete these forms so you will be eligible. Notice the you, right? It's a little bit more specific rather than all staffers, right? That's what we mean. Because we need more space for our new inventory, we are staging a 2-for-1 sale, as opposed to this 2-for-1 sale makes it possible for you to buy a year's supply of paper, but only pay for 6 months worth. Okay, so receiver focused. The message has been not tailored or manipulated or written in some subversive kind of way, but it uses the pronoun you. So it kind of personalizes it, right? It's more receiver focused. The person writing that statement considered who was going to write it. Who was going to read it. So for you to buy a year's supply of paper, that you will be eligible. So it really changes the tone. Okay. The I and you, we take the pleasure in announcing an agreement made with HP. Okay, we are issuing a refund. We need your account number before we can do anything. I have a few questions of which I would like to get feedback. So we take the pleasure. We are issuing. We need your account. This is the way in which you can write a statement that is inclusive. There's not, I and you. There's no sort of hierarchical issue going on here. It's we. The only thing I can use here by way of example, I used to work in a factory, worked in a factory for years, and I can remember back good group leaders and bad group leaders. And the ones, to my mind, that were good were ones that would use this we view, which means if there was a problem, one of my group leaders, my boss, right, my group leader would come up to me and say, okay, Ed, we've got a problem down here that I think we can probably solve. Okay, what has he done? First of all, he's put himself at the level of me, who is just an hourly worker, not a salaried worker. I'm not the boss or the group leader, but he says, we have a problem. Okay, he reflects the fact that the problem also is going to impact him as well as myself. So I think we can probably figure this out. So there's almost an unconscious onus that I may have the skill set to solve that problem, rather than you need to fix it. So the way in which you talk to people really has a lot to do with how that message will be received. So using the we pronoun is inclusive. It levels the playing field, sort of it levels that hierarchical relationship between people. And it goes a long way. Something it can be sometimes that's subtle. The you view, an agreement with HP, allows you and other students to buy discounted printers at your convenient student store. You will receive a refund. Would you mind giving me your account number? Read that one carefully. Or your feedback is important. Please answer a few questions. Again, it's not we, but it is still personalized because it's allowing you and others. You will receive it's directed to me. I'm not all staffers, hi there, dear client, dear fill in the blank. No, I'm not. I'm actually being addressed. I'm being addressed as you, right? That goes a long way. It softens the blow. It softens the message. So the criteria for writing a good message ultimately is actually pretty straightforward. And if you like sort of, things that are kind of in lists, you can talk about the 5 C's: clear, complete, correct, concise, and courteous. All those things go a long way to creating a good and effective message. Okay, I'll be back very shortly with our last video, which is a fairly brief one. Okay, see you soon.